The arrival, they said Earth cadets were overhyped. He passed every trial blindfolded. The massive silver gates of the Intergalactic Academy opened with a deep, echoing hum. Thousands of alien cadets, each from different worlds, turned their heads as the last competitor stepped inside. He was human, tall, lean, wearing a dark training suit. But what caught everyone's attention wasn't his calm walk or his confident posture. It was the black cloth tied tightly over his eyes. Whispers began almost instantly. "Is this a joke?" a blue-scaled Carethian hissed to her friend. "They say humans are arrogant," a tall insectoid cadet clicked in disapproval. "Now I believe it." Others laughed, some recording hollows on their wrist devices. In all the Academy's history, no cadet had ever dared to take the entrance trials without sight. These were not games. Every year candidates failed. Some didn't return home at all. At the far end of the plaza, a large holographic display lit up, showing the first trial, Asteroid Gauntlet. It was a deadly obstacle simulation, shifting meteor tunnels, plasma storms, hostile drones, designed to push reflexes and awareness to the breaking point. Ethan Cole stood alone in the starting zone. He could hear the crowd's laughter even through the thick arena walls, but his face remained calm, unreadable. The voice of the trial commander rang out from the speakers above. "Cadets, you will complete the course in 10 minutes or be eliminated. Begin when the signal sounds. Remove all unnecessary gear." Ethan made no move to touch his blindfold. An officer stepped forward, his voice sharp. "Human cadet, you are advised to remove that cloth. Visibility is critical for survival." Ethan simply tilted his head slightly. "Not for me." The officer looked ready to argue, but the commander's voice cut in again, more curious than angry. "Leave him. Let him tree. The Academy welcomes confidence and consequences." The crowd roared in anticipation. Some whispered bets. None were in Ethan's favor. A sharp tone echoed through the arena. The gates in front of Ethan hissed open, revealing the swirling chaos of the asteroid gauntlet. Massive chunks of rock floated in the void, spinning and colliding. Energy storms crackled between them, sending blinding flashes across the dark expanse. Drones zipped between the asteroids, their weapons primed. Ethan stepped forward, slowly at first, then with a steady, measured pace. He moved like someone who could see everything, yet his eyes remained covered. The first meteor drifted past him, its surface crumbling into sharp debris. Without turning his head, he shifted sideways, letting the shards sail harmlessly past his arm. An alien commentator's voice broke the silence. "He's avoiding obstacles. But how?" Inside his mind, Ethan was not thinking about the crowd or their doubt. He was listening. Every sound, the deep groan of moving rock, the faint hum of drone engines, the sharp static of plasma fields, painted a picture in his head. Years of training had taught him to read the world without sight. A low vibration in the floor plate warned him of a collapsing tunnel ahead. He broke into a sprint, leaping forward just as the asteroid passage behind him shattered into drifting rubble. Gasps echoed from the stands. The drones made their move. 3 of them zipped in from the left, energy blasters aimed. Ethan dropped low, rolling to the right. The closest drone fired. A sizzling beam shot past where his head had been a heartbeat earlier. Without missing a step, he drew his training staff, striking in 3 quick motions. The first drone's sensor shattered. The second spun wildly into a plasma crackle. The third retreated, its targeting scrambled. The crowd's laughter had quieted. A hush began to spread. Ethan reached the midsection of the course, the meteor caverns. This was the deadliest part. Narrow tunnels through unstable rock, unpredictable gravity shifts, and sudden collapses. One wrong move here and he would be crushed or drift into open void. He slowed his breathing, feeling each step through his boots. The faintest tremors in the rock warned him of dangerous shifts. Twice he stopped just before a platform gave way. Once he ducked under a falling slab of stone that missed him by inches. The announcer's voice, which had been mocking at the start, now carried a note of disbelief. "The human has reached Sector 7 without sight." From the upper viewing platform, a young alien cadet named Krell narrowed his eyes. His reptilian tail flicked with irritation. "This human thinks he's special. Let's see how long that lasts. Back inside the cavern, Ethan was nearing the exit. He could hear the low hum of the finished gate ahead. But then, the sound changed. A deep groan, sharper than before, rumbled through the walls. He froze. Above him, the ceiling began to crack. Massive chunks of rock tore free, falling in deadly silence toward him. The crowd gasped. Some turned away, certain it was over. Ethan moved. A sidestep, a crouch, a leap forward. Each motion precise, almost too quick for the eye to follow. The last boulder crashed to the ground behind him as he stepped through the finish gate, untouched. The timer on the screen froze. 8 minutes, 14 seconds. Silence. Then, a wave of stunned murmurs. Ethan reached up, adjusted the blindfold slightly, and faced the crowd. "First trial's done," he said quietly. "What's next?" The arena erupted. Not with laughter this time, but with shock. The first trial isn't over. They said Earth cadets were overhyped. He passed every trial blindfolded. The crowd was still buzzing when the commander's voice thundered across the arena. "Do not leave the platform, Cadet Cole. The first trial is not over." Ethan stopped mid-step. Around him, the arena floor began to shift. Panels of steel twisted open, revealing another section of the gauntlet hidden below. From above, the audience leaned forward. Even the other cadets, some smug, some curious, were silent now. The floor sank, carrying Ethan down into darkness. The air changed, cooler, heavier. Somewhere in the shadows, gears turned and locks clicked. When the lights came on, he was standing in a massive chamber of black stone, glowing cracks running across the walls. The trial's second phase had begun, the silent kill zone. The rules were simple, at least on paper. The cadet must cross the chamber and reach the far door. The problem? The entire space was filled with motion-sensitive defense drones. They could not be seen, only heard, and they attacked anything that moved too quickly or made the wrong sound. For anyone else, it would be near impossible. For Ethan, it was exactly his kind of fight. He took a slow step forward, boots barely making a sound. The chamber hummed faintly, like a living thing. Somewhere to his left, he caught the subtle whir of a drone shifting in midair. Without hesitation, he froze. The audience held their breath. 3 seconds passed. The drone drifted away, fooled into thinking there was nothing there. Ethan moved again, slower this time. He navigated by sound, the faint clicks of hidden vents, the change in echo as walls angled closer, the quiet ripple of air displaced by something unseen. Above, in the observation deck, Kral the reptilian cadet watched with narrowed eyes. He didn't like this human. There was no fear in him, and worse, the crowd's earlier mockery was turning into respect. Kral tapped his wrist pad and sent a coded signal. Deep in the chamber, a small maintenance hatch slid open behind Ethan. A drone slithered out, not part of the official trial. It was bigger, faster, and its weapon was set to full power. The whirring was almost silent, but Ethan caught it, different from the others, sharper, more aggressive. He turned his head slightly, blindfold still in place. The drone accelerated, aiming directly at his back. Ethan dropped flat against the ground. The drone shot sliced through the air above him, striking a stone pillar. The impact lit the chamber in a brief flash of white. The official drone stirred, confused by the sudden noise. Now the real danger began. Half a dozen defense drones activated at once, sweeping the chamber with searching beams of light. One beam slid across Ethan's shoulder. He could almost feel the heat of it. He rolled, pressing himself into a shallow crack in the wall. A passing beam missed him by an inch. He didn't move again until the hum faded and the lights swung away. From the observation deck, the instructors were watching closely. One of them leaned forward. He's adapting to multiple threats at once. Without vision. Remarkable. Ethan resumed his crawl forward, counting his steps in his head. The far door had to be close now, but the extra drone, the illegal one, was still somewhere in the chamber, waiting. The sound came from above this time, a faint shift in air pressure. He ducked, swinging his staff upward in a sharp arc. The blow connected with a hard metallic crack. The rogue drone spiraled down, sparks trailing, until it slammed against the stone floor. Ethan didn't wait. He moved in a controlled sprint, weaving through the remaining drone's sensor arcs. Each step was deliberate, but faster now, timed perfectly between each sweep of their light. The door loomed ahead. One final drone hovered in front of it, blocking the exit. Ethan slowed, listening to its movement pattern. 3 rotations to the left, pause, 2 rotations to the right. On the next pause, he slid past it, barely brushing the cold metal of its casing. The heavy door slid open. A burst of bright light flooded the chamber as Ethan stepped through, the timer on. The display froze again, 6 minutes, 3 seconds. The crowd's roar shook the walls. Even the commander's voice carried something new, approval. Cadet Cole, Trial 1 complete. Ethan simply adjusted his blindfold and walked toward the staging area. He didn't need to see the faces of the aliens around him to know their expressions had changed. In the shadows above, Krell's tail twitched in irritation. He hadn't expected the human to survive, let alone win. But the next trial Krell decided would be different. This time he wouldn't leave survival to chance. Sabotage in the lava platforms, they said Earth cadets were overhyped. He passed every trial blindfolded. The next morning, the training arena was hotter than usual, literally. Steam hissed from vents in the floor, and the air shimmered with heat waves. In the center, massive stone platforms floated above a lake of glowing orange lava. The platforms shifted unpredictably, tilting and spinning without warning. Trial 2 had a name whispered among cadets, the Inferno Leap. From the stands, alien spectators gathered early. Word of the blindfolded human had spread overnight, and now everyone wanted to see him fall. Some even carried betting slips, convinced this would be the trial where Ethan Cole finally failed. High above, in a restricted control booth, Krell stood beside a maintenance console. His sharp claws tapped the controls. Officially, he wasn't supposed to be there. Unofficially, he had bribed a junior tech to adjust the platform systems. "They'll move faster," Krell hissed quietly. "And if 1 or 2 collapse early, who's to say it wasn't bad luck?" Down in the starting zone, Ethan stood calm as ever. He could feel the heat radiating from the lava, the faint rumble of machinery moving the platforms. The blindfold was still in place. A booming voice announced, "Cadets, the objective is to cross to the far gate. Step carefully. 1 mistake and you'll be swimming in molten rock." The starting horn blared. Ethan took his first step onto the nearest platform. It was already tilting sharply, forcing him to adjust his balance immediately. A normal cadet would watch their footing, but Ethan relied on something else, listening to the creak of the supports, feeling the subtle tremors through his boots. 2 platforms ahead, another cadet from a different species leapt, misjudged the spin, and plunged screaming into the lava below. The crowd gasped. Ethan didn't rush. He moved with measured precision, each jump timed with the shifting rhythm of the platforms. But Krell's sabotage had begun. The next section moved at double speed. One platform shuddered violently beneath him, threatening to throw him off. He dropped into a low crouch, gripping the edges with his fingers until the movement steadied. Without hesitation, he leapt to the next one. The heat was intense now. Each jump brought him closer to the far gate, but also closer to the most dangerous part of the course, the collapsing platforms. Normally, they gave a warning, a grinding sound, before breaking apart. But Krell had silenced that alarm. From his perch, Krell watched eagerly as Ethan stepped onto one of the sabotaged platforms. Beneath the human's boots, the stone began to crack. The crowd leaned forward. This was it. Ethan froze, not because he saw the cracks, but because he felt them. The vibration wasn't the same as a normal platform shift. It was hollow, unstable. He had only seconds. With a sudden burst of speed, he pushed off just as the platform crumbled into the lava. His landing on the next one was rough, but he stayed upright. The crowd erupted in cheers and disbelief. Krell's claws dug into the console. "Impossible, claw," he muttered. Ethan continued forward, but now the platforms were moving in unpredictable patterns. Some tilted so far he was forced to run uphill against gravity. Others spun in full circles, forcing him to time his jumps with perfect precision. One jump took him to the final stretch, 3 platforms leading to the gate. But between him and the finish line, a massive column of fire roared upward, blocking the path in time bursts. He stood still, counting the seconds between each eruption. The heat washed over him, blistering the air. 1, 2, 3, move. He dashed forward, leaping through the gap just as the flames roared back to life behind him. A final jump took him to the gate, where he landed with both feet planted firmly. The trial timer froze, 5 minutes 42 seconds. The crowd went wild, some cheered for him now, others still muttered in disbelief. From the control booth, Kral's tail lashed in frustration. His sabotage had failed, again, but he wasn't done. The next trial would be far more dangerous. As Ethan walked away from the gate, one of the instructors approached him. "You knew the platforms were collapsing before it happened," she said quietly. "I didn't know," Ethan replied. "I felt it." In the stands, whispers began again, no longer mocking, but curious. Who was this human, and how far could he go? The secret behind the blindfold. They said Earth cadets were overhyped. He passed every trial, blindfolded. The day after the Inferno leap, the training hall was quiet, too quiet. No roaring crowd, no flashing announcements, just the sound of boots echoing across the steel floor as Ethan was summoned to a private chamber. The walls here were different, smooth black metal instead of the usual silver. In the center of the room stood 3 figures: Commander Vera, tall and sharp-eyed, Instructor Solon, a broad-shouldered alien with skin like polished stone, and an older woman in a white robe who didn't wear an academy badge at all. "Cadet Cole," Vera said, her voice calm but edged with curiosity. "You've completed 2 of the academy's deadliest trials without sight. We have questions." Ethan remained still. "And if I choose not to answer?" "Then you'll still face the next trial," Solon rumbled, "but we will watch you even closer."
The robed woman stepped forward. Her voice was soft, but there was something unsettling in it. "You're not the first human to attend the academy. But you are different. I want to know why." Ethan didn't answer. Instead, he tilted his head slightly, listening, not to their words, but to the faint hum behind the walls. "Someone was recording this meeting. You're wasting time," Vera said, stepping aside. A section of the floor slid open, revealing the next trial. The Triple Combat Arena. 3 gates stood on the far side of a wide, circular pit. Behind them, shadows shifted, large, heavy figures waiting to be unleashed. The commander's voice carried into the chamber. 3 opponents. Different species. Different weapons. No safety protocols. The robed woman raised an eyebrow. A cadet could be killed in there. Vera's expression didn't change. "Yes." Ethan stepped into the pit. He could smell oil, metal, and something else, like the dry scent of desert sand. His grip tightened on his staff, the gates opened, the first opponent charged, an armored brute from the target system, wielding a hammer the size of a small boulder. The ground shook with every step. Ethan sidestepped the first swing, hearing the rush of air before it came. The second swing was faster, but still predictable. Ethan ducked, swept the brute's legs from under him, and sent him crashing to the floor. The second fighter didn't wait. A 4-armed insectoid cadet leapt forward, striking with 2 plasma blades and 2 clawed hands. Her movements were chaotic, unpredictable, perfect for overwhelming an opponent who relied on sight. But Ethan wasn't using sight. He heard the buzz of the plasma blades, felt the shift of air as each arm moved. He struck twice, once to disarm, once to send her sprawling. The crowd in the observation decks erupted. This wasn't luck. This was skill, but the third gate op. And silence fell. The figure that stepped out was no ordinary cadet. It was a fully trained academy instructor, bigger, faster, and armed with a twin-bladed staff. His voice was low, mocking. "Let's see what your tricks are worth against someone who doesn't miss." The first strike came without warning, a blur of motion and the hiss of spinning metal. Ethan blocked, the impact jarring up his arms. The instructor pressed the attack, forcing Ethan back step by step. For the first time, Ethan's heart pounded harder. This wasn't like the others. Every sound came too quickly, too close together. The instructor spoke as he struck. You learned to fight blind. I can hear it in your rhythm. But do they know why? Ethan gritted his teeth. Do they know, the instructor continued, that you were trained in the dark cell? That Earth still runs soldiers through the blindfold program. The crowd gasped. Even the robed woman leaned forward. The dark cell was a rumor, an extreme survival regimen where cadets were trained in complete sensory deprivation for months at a time. Most who tried it never returned to service. Ethan said nothing. He let the instructor keep talking, keep moving, until the rhythm broke. In that instant, Ethan struck. One precise hit to the chest, another to the staff, and the weapon spun free into the air. The instructor stumbled. Ethan caught the falling weapon mid-spin and tossed it to the ground beside him. You talk too much, he said. The trial bell sounded. All three opponents were downed. As Ethan left the arena, the robed woman's voice followed him. The blindfold isn't a handicap, it's your advantage. The others think you're dangerous now. Soon, they'll think you're unstoppable. In the shadows above, Kral smiled for the first time in days. Good, he muttered. That will make it even sweeter when I'm the one to stop him. Sabotage in the triple duel. They said Earth cadets were overhyped. He passed every trial blindfolded. The next trial wasn't supposed to be until the following day.
But when Ethan was summoned at dawn, still damp from the training hall showers, he knew something was wrong. The arena lights were already blazing, casting long shadows across the sand. 3 weapon racks stood at the center, spears, staffs, and energy blades. Around the pit, the stands were fuller than usual, with more instructors than cadets watching. Ethan's gut told him this wasn't just another test. From the opposite gates, 3 opponents emerged, not students but seasoned warriors from 3 different worlds. One wore powered armor, one carried a plasma whip that hissed with energy, and the third was Kral. The reptilian cadet's grin was wide and unblinking. Today, human, I prove you're nothing but a blind fool who got lucky. The trial bell rang before Ethan could answer. The armored warrior struck first, charging with a heavy kinetic shield. Ethan sidestepped, the vibration of the ground warning him before the impact came. But as he moved, the whip cracked, a sizzling line of heat slicing through the air. He twisted, barely avoiding it. The heat singed his arm, the smell of burnt fabric sharp in his nose. He countered with a quick staff strike, knocking the whip wielder back. But then he heard it, a faint, high-pitched whine that didn't belong to any of the fighters. From above, hidden in the upper arena structure, small drones activated. Their targeting lasers were soundless, invisible to the naked eye. But Ethan felt the hum in the air. This wasn't part of the official trial. Kral had brought his sabotage again, only this time it could kill him outright. The first drone fired. The shot was silent until it struck the sand beside Ethan's foot, exploding into a flash of molten glass. The crowd gasped. Ethan moved instantly, weaving between the fighters and the drone fire. He used his opponents as cover, forcing the drones to hesitate before firing a gasp. The armored warrior roared in frustration, charging him. Ethan sidestepped again, letting the warrior slam directly into the plasma whip fighter, tangling them both. Now only Kral stood free. The reptilian's tail lashed the ground. No more tricks, human. This ends now. His voice was low, dangerous. Kral lunged, claws extended. Ethan heard the rush of air, the scrape of claw against sand. He ducked, swept his staff low, and sent Kral sprawling. But before Ethan could finish it, the drones fired again. 3 shots perfectly timed. Ethan had less than a second. He yanked Kral upright and spun him into the line of fire. The stun blast slammed into Kral's armor, knocking him unconscious instantly. The crowd erupted in chaos, some in shock, others in outrage. The drones retreated into the shadows above, their job unfinished. Ethan knew if he called them out now, the Academy would deny everything. This was deeper than just Kral's hatred. It meant someone higher up wanted him gone. The trial bell rang, signaling his victory. All 3 opponents were down. As the roar of the crowd faded, Instructor Solon approached, his stone-like face unreadable. You are either the luckiest cadet I've seen, or the most dangerous. Ethan adjusted his blindfold. Neither. I'm just not as easy to kill as they hoped. Up in the observation deck, the robed woman leaned to Commander Vera. If this continues, the trials will have to be altered. Otherwise, he might actually win the crest. Vera didn't take her eyes off Ethan. If he survives the next trial, she said, it will be the most dangerous thing the Academy has ever seen. Betrayal in the zero-gravity maze. They said Earth cadets were overhyped. He passed every trial blindfolded. The summons came at night. No announcement, no fanfare. Ethan was led through a narrow steel corridor to a sealed chamber deep beneath the Academy. The air was colder here, carrying the faint smell of lubricants and ozone.
Commander Vera stood waiting. The robed woman was beside her, and half a dozen instructors lined the walls. Their expressions were neutral, but the air felt heavy, like a storm about to break. Cadet Cole, Vera began, you've reached the 6th trial. Few have ever made it this far. But understand, this one will not be forgiving. Ethan tilted his head slightly. None of them have been forgiving. This one, the robed woman said, has never been passed. The wall behind them groaned and slid open, revealing a vast, dimly lit chamber. Floating steel corridors twisted and intersected in every direction, suspended in a void of black. There was no floor, only endless emptiness below. The corridors rotated slowly, some tilting into vertical angles before straightening again. This was the zero-gravity maze. The rules were simple: navigate to the beacon at the far side. The dangers were anything but simple: moving corridors, airlocks that sealed without warning, hidden drones, and the void itself. As Ethan stepped onto the first corridor, the gravity shifted. His boots barely clung to the magnetic grip before releasing entirely. He floated forward, adjusting to the weightless drift. The hum of machinery echoed faintly through the structure, every vibration telling him where the next rotation was coming, but there was something else, something wrong. The hum wasn't steady. Sections of the maze carried a deeper, irregular thrum, like overloaded power. Someone had tampered with the maze's systems. In the control room above, Kral leaned over the console, tail flicking. Cut power to section 12 when he reaches it. Let him drift into the void. One of the techs hesitated. That's not protocol, do it. Back in the maze, Ethan floated along a narrow shaft when the magnetic walls suddenly went dead. He felt the shift instantly, the loss of pull, and grabbed a handhold. Just before the corridor tilted down into open space. The void yawned below, silent and endless. The magnetic pull returned a second later, but Ethan knew it wasn't an accident. Someone wanted him gone. He kept moving, using both his boots and hands to guide himself. The maze's turns became sharper, the rotations faster. Twice, he ducked into side corridors to avoid the sudden hiss of airlocks sealing behind him. Once, a drone swept past, its sensors scanning for heat signatures. It missed him by centimeters. Halfway through, the sabotage got worse. A section ahead was completely dark. No hum, no lights, no magnetic pull. It was a dead zone. In weightlessness, that meant one wrong push could send him drifting until he slammed into a wall, or never stopped drifting at all. Ethan crouched low, listening. Even here, sound carried faintly through the metal. He caught the distant vibration of the next active corridor and launched himself toward it, twisting midair to grab the wall before the pull could yank him the wrong way. The crowd above, watching through holographic feeds, was silent now. This wasn't just a trial, it was an execution attempt. But the human kept going. Finally, he reached the last section, a rotating tunnel with multiple spinning blades crossing its path. Normally, the blades were slow enough for cadets to time their movements. Tonight, they were spinning at double speed. Ethan stood perfectly still, counting. The whir of the blades became a rhythm in his mind. 4 rotations, pause, 3 rotations, pause. He moved on the second pause, gripping the wall and pulling himself through with precision. The last blade missed his ankle by a whisper. The beacon's hum filled his ears as he touched down. The trial timer froze. 9 minutes, 59 seconds, 1 second before the cut-off time. In the control room, Kral slammed his claws against the console. Possible. On the observation deck, Commander Vera's eyes narrowed. He survived sabotage, and still beat the clock.
That makes him more than dangerous. It makes him a threat to the Academy's control. The robed woman smiled faintly. Or the beginning of something greater. Ethan, standing by the beacon, adjusted his blindfold and turned his head slightly toward the crowd. One more trial left, he said softly. Make it count. The final stand. They said Earth cadets were overhyped. He passed every trial blindfolded. The last trial wasn't announced with the usual fanfare. There was no booming voice, no crowd countdown, just silence. Ethan stood in the center of the grand arena, the largest chamber in the academy. The floor was a circle of black alloy, gleaming under a single white spotlight. Above, thousands of alien cadets and instructors filled the stands. But instead of the usual jeers, there was a low, tense hum, anticipation mixed with unease. Across from him, the gate opened. At first, Ethan heard nothing. Then a slow, heavy tread echoed against the walls. The figure that stepped out wasn't a cadet, wasn't an instructor. It was a Vorn-class combat unit, a towering exosuit piloted by the Academy's deadliest warrior, Commander Solon himself. Vera's voice rang through the chamber. Final trial. Defeat your opponent or survive 5 minutes. Weapons permitted. From the control booth, Krau leaned forward, a satisfied smirk curling his mouth. Let's see you dodge this, human. The Vorn unit's servos whined as it took its first step. Ethan heard the low hum of its power core, the sharp hiss of its plasma cannons charging. Without warning, twin bolts of superheated energy screamed toward him. He dropped into a roll, the blast scorching the ground where he had stood. The heat washed over him, but his mind stayed cold and clear. Every vibration in the arena floor told him where the machine moved. The crowd gasped as he darted forward, his staff striking the mech's leg plats. Inksy sparks flew, but the armor barely dented. Solon's voice boomed from inside the suit. Your tricks end here, cadet. The mech's arm swung in a massive arc. Ethan ducked under it, the rush of displaced air brushing his face. He vaulted onto the arm, running up toward the shoulder joint before the mech twisted violently to throw him off. He hit the ground hard, rolling to absorb the impact. Above, in the observation deck, the robed woman leaned toward Vera. If he wins this, the Academy's reputation will change forever. Vera's jaw tightened. He won't. On the far side of the arena, hidden panels slid open. Half a dozen attack drones launched into the air. This was no longer part of the official trial. The audience noticed. Whispers spread like wildfire. Ethan heard the drones before he felt their targeting lasers sweep across him. He moved instantly, weaving between the mech's legs to force the drones to hesitate. 2 fired anyway, the blast hitting the mech's armor, making Solon curse inside the suit. Ethan knew this was his only chance. He leapt onto the mech's back, climbing with quick, precise motions until he reached the core panel. His fingers found the maintenance latch, not by sight, but by memory of similar systems back on Earth. The drones closed in. The mech spun, trying to shake him loose, but Ethan ripped the panel open and jammed his staff inside, twisting hard. The power core sputtered, the mech's limbs locking for just 2 seconds. It was enough. He slid down the mech's side, landing in a low crouch as the machine powered down completely. The drones hovered uncertainly, then dropped to the floor, disabled. For a heartbeat, the arena was silent. Then, an eruption. Cheers from cadets of worlds that had once mocked him. Shock from those who'd bet against him. Commander Vera stood, her voice cutting through the noise. Cadet Ethan Cole, by Survey, iving and defeating every trial, including the final stand, you are awarded the Golden Crest. The robed woman's eyes gleamed. Not just awarded, she said softly, by Satan, but remembered.
Ethan adjusted his blindfold one last time. Overrated, he said, his voice carrying through the arena. No. We're underestimated. The stands roared. The galaxy had a new champion, and he hadn't needed his eyes to see the path forward.